different ways. One direction takes you years, another takes you days. Many people on the roads looking at the sights, many others with their troubles looking for their rights. See them move along the road in search of life divine, beggars in a gold mine. Take you there many different ways. One direction takes you years, the other takes you days.
This is what I know for sure. Every spiritual community has some traditions. Every spiritual lineage has some traditions. And we have some as well. We have our chant. You know what the chant is? There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. And that life is my life now. It's a great chant. We actually have a fun Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, but we have a good Super Bowl fun tradition for those of you that aren't busy preparing hors d'oeuvres and snacks and actually come. But we give you lots of opportunity, and that is that we have started collecting food for food banks, as you heard from our wonderful Tim Brinsfield. And it's becoming more, we do more and more every year, which means more and more people get food every year. And I was thinking about that today. I know there's people here that probably rely on a food bank. There was a time when I was in my 20s and going to college and I didn't have money for food. The food was not in the budget. But I happened to belong to a church that had a food bank. And I survived on my grandmother's venison and beef and food bank food. So I know that it's something that can often help people go through a period of life. And when my mother and I were, she divorced my father when I was 9 months old, and so raised me by herself till I was 10. And I didn't realize it then, but I was watching some young child talk about hunger in the United States, and the child said we put everything in the sink in ice because we can't afford a refrigerator. And I remember we didn't have a refrigerator, and we had a hot pad. In fact, it wasn't even a hot pad, it was one of those plug-in skillets. So we had soup, and we had grilled sandwiches. And that wasn't bad, but I'm so grateful that was available. So for some people, soup is a meal, and it's an important meal. So I'm glad we're doing this. And we also, to be a real spiritual community, we have to have a high holy day. And so we do. And our high holy day is Groundhog's Day. Because it hasn't been taken yet. The Christians took winter solstice, made it Christmas. Then they took spring equinox, made it Easter. But they hadn't quite noticed the time right between, and I forgot there's a Celtic name for it, Ibelon, or who knows that, the Celtic name, what? Imbolc. That they hadn't quite got onto that yet, which is halfway in between the winter solstice and spring equinox is February 2nd. They did make it Candlemas, but it was not a big deal. So let's make it ours. Make it our big deal. Now, the other reason I love it is because it is so filled with symbolism. Every time I turn around, I see the symbolism of it again and again and again and again. I remember it was actually on a February 2nd, and I remember this because that's my grandmother's birthday, and I was thinking about my grandmother, and then all of a sudden, all this boom, 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 of the symbolism of how perfect it is that a Celtic tradition became a Catholic semi-mass, became Groundhog's Day, but it's Groundhog's Day that has all the symbolism in it. And I love symbolism because our soul thinks in symbols, in feelings and stories. It's not so much words. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but if you can picture something happening, it can speak to your soul and go underneath logic. Logic is a gatekeeper to the mysteries of life. But symbols and stories go, here we are. And you shift and change. And the Groundhog's Day is like that. So I want to share with you the 4 symbols that I have that affect me for Groundhog's Day. 4 symbols. First one is, we avoid our shadow. We all avoid our shadow. Now, what is a shadow? A shadow is a limited belief that causes us pain, and yet it's a something that's a nothing, or a nothing trying to be a something. So if we had a bright light there and they shined it on me, I would be huge on that screen and look really scary, but that which is on the screen looking big and scary is a nothing. Since we believe that there's one life, and that life is God's life, and that life is perfect, and that life is my life now, if it is not of God, it's not really of me, but can certainly be a shadow that I believe in. I really got this big time when I first moved to Seattle. I was working with a woman, and I made a mistake that I hope I don't do anymore. And the mistake I made was I believed her story. I hope I don't do that anymore. I believed that things were bad. Now, I took a lot of training to not believe your stuff. You don't want me believing your stuff. But how many of you tell your friends about your stuff? And then, if they don't quite believe you, you talk them into it. Well, this woman talked me into her stuff, which is that she needed a lot of things. She needed to sell her home. She needed to find a place to live. She needed to get a job. She had all these needs, and they were desperate. And I bought into the desperateness of it. So I was going to go in with all my spiritual tools, just like the cowboy walking in. We should have Western music now. I got my bow legs and everything. By the way, have you ever gone to Montana? Guys walk like this. I mean, I thought it was a shtick. It's not. You see a guy that's been on a horse all his life, and he walks like this, honest. Anyway, so I'm not making this up. Anyway, so here I am. I'm the cavalry coming in, going to save her. And I got my tool belts of affirmations and prayers and believing in God, and I got faith. I'm going to save that damsel in distress. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, nothing happened. And then I prayed some more, gave it my best shot. Boom, nothing happened. And in fact, actually, it just got more desperate. I took a deep breath. I don't know what happened, but something like bopped me on the head. And all of a sudden, I got that the issue was not what she needed. The issue was that she needed. It wasn't this, and this that we had to fix. It's that she had a need in her. And I had to not believe in the need because the need was the shadow looking big. You know, there's a song out of the Rose. How many of you remember that? Love is a hungry, aching need. Who'd sign up for that? Do you notice they don't put on Hallmark cards? I have a hungry, aching need for you. Who would love that person? Somebody else with a hungry, aching need. That's what. But we don't talk about that. If we told the truth, needy attracts needy, and need attracts need. So I got clear, and I released my belief in need. There is no need. Need is something that is a something that's a nothing, or a nothing trying to be a something. When you have need in your soul, you must have need out there to prove what you believe. So I released my belief in need, and all of a sudden she got a job, she got a place to work, and she sold her house, like in 3 days. It wasn't about fixing, it was about healing. Some of us want to be fixed. What we could pray for is, can I be whole? Can I be full? The next thing is that I learned from Groundhog's Day is that where there is a great shadow, there is a great light. Most of us play safe and avoid the shadow, but if we turned away from the shadow, we would see the light and put our focus on that. One of the things we just studied last week in Inward Journey is that a lot of people back away from their spiritual practice when they move into doubt. How many of you have ever had doubt in God and prayer and this stupid teaching and everything? You know, doubt is the shadow of faith. You have great doubt because you finally have great faith. You finally have so much light in you because that you can actually begin to doubt your previous. You can doubt where you're going because you're not facing the light. You just are allowing the light to grow in you. See, and I have to say this every once in a while. I have to remind myself. My family had no doubt. They also had no faith. If you don't believe in anything, you don't doubt anything. But the more you grow in your light, the more you can look around and say, well, what about that? And what about that? What about that? Turn around and see what's inspiring you to even look. Great light. The groundhog saw his shadow because he forgot to look at the sun. We don't look at our strength sometimes. We overanalyze our weakness, which is the shadow. Well, you don't, but you have friends that do. Number 3, the third thing that I learned from Groundhog's Day, and this comes from Groundhog's Day, the movie, is that life recycles until we change. They change their name, they change their costume, but it seems like deja vu until we change. And the fourth thing, and I just got this on Friday, is that there's always time to celebrate changes in the right direction. See, the more light we have, the more we can, if we choose to, see that things are really changing. Change is a constant, but oftentimes we are stagnant in our thinking. What happened on Groundhog's Day is I went, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm still complaining about the long nights and the short days, and yet we're halfway to spring equinox. I mean, we've been adding minutes of daylight a day. Minutes. And I'm still operating like, oh. But see, that happens. Now, when someone prays for something, and I talk about this in Beyond Limits, when somebody prays for something, often it doesn't happen like overnight. Now, certainly we can sell our house overnight. But oftentimes there is a process. And in that process, I call it the divine trickle. And as you pay attention to what seems to be happening and give it attention, you actually speed up the process. So if you want something, notice how it seems to start to show up, and celebrate that. On Friday, I found myself lighting candles for no reason. And I realized that I was practicing candle mass. I was celebrating the return of the long days, even though the long days weren't totally back again. So celebrate and acknowledge that you don't get as grumpy as you used to. Celebrate and acknowledge that you forgive quickly or quicker. Celebrate and acknowledge that you're more optimistic. I will. You know, in this dark winter, optimism is a ray of light. And every time I run across somebody that's optimistic, or I am optimistic, it feels like light is returning. So celebrate that. Now, what does that have to do with love, or now's a time to love? Well, the talk title for today is Love is Who We Are, and so I want to shift this just a bit and talk about Groundhog's Day lessons in relationship to love. First thing, we all long to connect, to be known, to be valued, to be respected, to be honored. And we're afraid we won't be. We all long to connect, to be known, to be valued, and to be respected, but we're afraid we won't be. We are social animals. In the evolution of things, there was a time when it was the survival of the fittest. But when it came to primates, it's the survival of the most cooperative. I would not survive on this planet if I didn't have people helping me out, whether it's personally or socially. When we were growing up as a species, we would not have survived if we hadn't band together. It's in our DNA to cooperate. It's in our DNA to take care of each other. And our soul knows that, longs for that, and is afraid that it might not happen. That's why we say things like, I was embarrassed to death. Because embarrassment is a separation, and the soul is speaking, don't separate me. It's killing to the soul. Now, we long to connect, and yet we're becoming more and more isolated. Studies have shown that social media is not helping us connect, it's actually making us more isolated, because we have pseudo connection. I show my selfie, and you show your selfie, and we think we've connected. There's no real connection there. There's no real sharing. I can say a phrase and you can say a phrase back, but it's not the same as looking at you and being seen by you, because that serves my soul. We need that. And yet, we don't think we'll get it because we are becoming more isolated. And because we don't think we get it, we will isolate more. We sit away from people instead of together. Because what if the person next to me doesn't want to acknowledge me? How many of you know that you go around with elevator consciousness? where we stand very close together and look straight ahead, not bothering to look around. That is soul killing. It hurts at a deep level. It just does. Now, it's great to have one or two people, but, well, I'll give you two quotes. The first quote is by Eli somebody, who said, "The opposite of love isn't hate, but indifference." And Mother Teresa said, "The problem with the world right now is that we draw our family circle too small." Where if we are really the place where God shows up, we could grow that circle really big and not be depleted. The depletion is an idea. So what happens is we hide or we armor ourselves with pseudo-protection. It's really rampant in Seattle, where we're known as Seattle nice. We will cut in front of somebody and wave in a nice way, but we won't engage. One of the reasons that I love traveling to another country is because we don't speak the same language, even if they say it's English. Have you ever gone to England? Talk slower. And have you gone to Scotland? Scotland, they buried all the vowels. You know, all those little stone things, they're vowels. And they use no vowels. There is no vowel in Scotland. And so you try to figure out what they're saying by what vowel might have gone in there. Would you write it down? Luckily, we write the same language. So I can go almost anywhere, even England and Scotland and places that speak English. Have you gone to the Caribbean? Mm-hmm. I mean, I love it. This is English, but unless I'm here in the Northwest, I don't even understand South. You gone to Louisiana lately? So I go these places and supposedly, let's just say, unless... Okay, Kathianne, forgive them all. I just realized I was getting judgmental. Okay, the good news is that I go to a place and I don't understand the language, so I have to understand them. Right. So I love traveling because I've got to stop and pay attention. And they have to pay attention to me. And it's wonderful to be paid attention to. The difference is like night and day because my soul gets filled. We've actually had to take time to communicate, and we've had to look at each other and make sure all the nuances are right. No fly-by conversations. No, how are you? I'm fine. Oh, that was satisfying. There was a thing that I shared on Facebook, and it must have been important because a lot of people shared it off my Facebook page, and that was a woman who's a blogger, and she talked about what she learned from being rejected or ignored or being invisible. She went up to she had her daughter, and they had just moved into town, and her daughter was going to be involved in a sport, so her daughter's getting ready to go out into the sport, and she saw some other mothers, and she walked up to them and said, "Hi, how's everybody doing today?" "Just fine." And they went back to their conversation in their little hut. And she felt so dissed, and it hurt. The next week, she did it, and it happened again. But instead of feeling dissed, she shifted, and she said, "Okay, this is what I get out of this. I will never do that to someone else." And she went out of her way to reach out, to touch, to say hello. She stopped for a woman who had some children saying, we're out of money and we're out of food. And her children and her had just gone to go grocery shopping, so they gathered up some of the food they were willing to share, and then they took all the extra money out of her purse and they gave it to the woman, and they touched hands and they shook hands, and the woman broke into tears because she said, no one else has even stopped. It's not whether you get it or not. It is soul damaging to feel ignored. to feel invisible. And that's the shadow of Seattle. And that's the shadow sometimes of our center. Because we had secret shoppers come, and they said they loved the message and they loved what we're doing, and they could really, all of this service was good, the music was great, and nobody talked to them out there. And they weren't sure they ever wanted to come back. It's a shadow. It's not true. What's true is we are God. Therefore, we are the highest name for God, which is love. Therefore, we can always reach. We can always touch, and we're not afraid of being dissed, because God can't be afraid of being dissed. Second lesson, Groundhog's Day / love. I'm going to go over. Is that okay? I have one person voting yes, and the rest are like, do we have to talk about shadows anymore? Not really. Number 2, the great light of love is the divine within us. We are the ones that wake up to God's presence, and therefore we can bring God's presence everywhere. But God's presence is expressed not through this wonderful meditative feeling. How many of you have gotten into a meditation and go, ooh, ah, yay, this is wonderful. Oh, goody. What's important is to bring the presence of God, which is self-givingness, into the world. That's the reason why some of us are waking up. Some of us are waking up to make God real in the world, and God is love. So we love first. We love even though they haven't loved. We love even though they haven't apologized. We love even though they haven't got their act together. We love even though they're different than us. We love even though they didn't vote for who we voted for. And we especially love because they didn't vote for who we voted for. So here's the deal. If you're in this place, tag you're it. Just as there's great light and we should turn to it, there's great light and we should be it. We should be the light of love everywhere we go. For some reason, Will Smith has taken on personal growth. Have you seen some of his videos? Yeah. Oh, Will Smith videos. And one of them he said is there's a difference between fault and responsibility. Something that could happen in your life, it may have been their fault, but it's your responsibility to make it good. Because fault goes on forever, but responsibility, the buck stops here. And I was listening to myself as I taught Inward Journey, and I've never said this before. Like, sometimes stuff just starts tumbling out of my mouth, and there's a part of me listening going, hey, girl, this is for you. And so I've got to do the class while I'm like taking notes. And what I realize is that the way I am, I could attribute to the way that I was raised. And it was not my fault, but I'm responsible to make it right. I'm responsible to turn it around. I'm responsible to make love real in the world. That's my responsibility. That's our responsibility. The next thing from Groundhog's Day. Life won't change until we start loving. Life will not change until we start loving. And then things will change. And we'll bring heaven to earth. Heaven's supposed to be on earth, but heaven and harmony are synonymous in my mind. And heaven is not someplace you arrive at. Heaven is something that you experience within yourself. And it will be easier when we just start to love. When we just get over being right. And instead choose to be whole. I am the light of God. I am the love of God, and I will be love showing up in this particular situation. The last thing that I want to share is that the more we become aware of love within and without and celebrate it, we need to become aware of love within and without and celebrate it, we need to be responsible for looking. Which takes a huge commitment. Takes paying attention. I heard from a psychologist recently that most marriages don't come apart because of money or affairs or any of that stuff. Most marriages fall apart because people say they have been drifting apart. We just grew apart. You want to know why you grew apart? You grew apart because you didn't consciously choose to connect and see the good in the other person. You didn't consciously choose to say, oh my God, the way you did that is so perfect. I'm so grateful. Instead, we just sort of take each other for granted and then the light goes out. I know. I can speak of this. Love is a constant, ongoing decision to connect with the other person, to not do drive-by. How are the kids? They're fine. How was your day? Good. What'd you do? Oh, nothing. To talk to each other like you don't know the same language and connect at a level where you have to pay attention to each other. And then celebrate every time you connect because you finally listened and so did they. Any questions? Don't be shy or else I'm going to make us sing. First service, one woman finally, when I said we're going to sing, if you don't have a question, she finally raised her hand late. I said, it's too late. Then she had a big question that would have, healed a lot of people. So if you have a question, be generous with it. Okay, right up here. Come on. No, you come on. No, we have people. Hello, Texas, Montana. I'm sorry about the bow legs. Oh my gosh, we have a cold contingency in Montana. You know that I'm speaking the truth though with great love because I'm a horsewoman. I know you're going to love me anyway. Go ahead.
This is not a personal question, but I was wondering when you talked about connection and fear of not being connected, is it the soul that's afraid of being connected, or is it the human aspect of ourselves? Maybe they're one and the same. I don't know.
Oh, no, they're not.
Okay.
Great, so let's do that. No, we're not. We have a soul, and then we have an ego. An ego is not bad. It's not the new devil. You can't go blaming it. It's my ego. The ego is a set of beliefs that we have acquired and built up so that we don't have to think about things. So it's actually our personality in a way, but it can become habitual. And it's not always conscious of what it's thinking. The soul wants to connect because it's God and it knows it's everything. I mean, at your soul level, if I could take every one of you and move you into a place where you really knew your soul and you would feel huge. You would be so beyond your body. And you could see that you were connected. You would feel and know at a deep level that you're connected with everything. That's the soul. The personality says, well, yeah, but what if they don't smile? What if I make a fool out of myself by talking to that person? So the ego or personality has developed structures probably out of not being told how magnificent they were as a child. How many of you grew up being told every single day that you are an incarnation of God and absolutely magnificent and that you will do great things in your life? See there, yeah. That's why we have a children's program. And that's what they're being told, that they're magnificent and that they don't have to do anything to earn love. Huge difference. But we were told we did, and we had to be good, and we had to do a certain thing. We had to do another thing, and that would make us okay. And if we couldn't live up to that, then we felt less, and we didn't want to be reminded again that we're not okay, so we build this shell. Pretty soon we look like a crustacean. No wonder people are stiff when they get old. But the soul longs to connect. That was a beautiful question. How many of you appreciate that question? Wasn't that a great question? Woo! Okay, so I'm still going to make you sing. I know you thought this is going to be our closing prayer. And it's important because it reminds me of how we're going to change the world. We're going to change the world by accepting that we are the love and the light of this living Spirit Almighty right now. And that we begin to love ourselves only because that's what we're made out of. So I also do this because I love to push buttons. And I was told a long time ago by a tall gentleman that came to church, women don't want to sing. Just stop it. So I did. I'm over it. So stand up. So personalities might not want to sing, but the soul doesn't mind it. And this way this goes is, I love myself so much, so that I can love you so much, so that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. This is our prayer. I love myself so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. I love myself so much that I can love you so much, that you can love you so much, that you can start loving me. And so it is.